Good morning. It is the 6th of October, 2023. The New York Times Daily Propaganda with David Leonhardt, our propagandist today. We're covering Abraham Lincoln's relevance to the House tumult, as well as the border, Congress, and the nobles. So we're going to be doing a lot more propaganda today, talking about the tumultuous time in the House. It's not tumultuous. Removing a speaker, while it may be a novel event, I wouldn't call it tumultuous because this was something that we knew might happen. All right. Differ we must in our polarized society, thanks to the Democrats. The simple act of listening to people with whom you disagree, let alone working with them, can be grounds for a rebuke. Right, which is what the Democrats do all the time. As soon as you say anything that goes against leftist dogma, you are instantly eliminated from the conversation. You are canceled outright, and they'll go after you for something 20 years ago that was perfectly fine at the time, and now it's bad. The House Republicans who toppled Speaker Kevin McCarthy this week did so because he forged bipartisan compromises supported by most members of both parties. That's not true. They supported by the Uniparty. That's true. By the corrupt people, absolutely. To the Republican rebels, negotiating with the opposition was a fireable offense. The better way to phrase that would be to say to the people that aren't corrupt, the handful of non-corrupt, non-bought-out people. Matt Gaetz isn't a millionaire. He hasn't become rich working in Congress. He sometimes sleeps in his office because he can't afford to live in Washington, D.C. Unlike Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whose real name is Sandy, who grew up rich with a silver spoon in her mouth and worked as a bartender as a part-time gig and goes to $500,000 a plate dinners, but nobody knows who pays for them and got dark money. Yeah, she's part of the corrupt establishment. All right. A similar purism is evident in the spread of book bans targeting material on race and sexuality. The only thing they're targeting is inappropriate things like porn in schools that teaches kids how to go on Grindr, and books that depict graphic oral sex. And then on the race thing, Ibram Kendi is a liar. He's been called out as a fraud by numerous organizations. The BLM organization has fallen apart because they were frauds. They're lying. So teaching lies doesn't help, and it makes things more divisive. Think Robin DiAngelo and her lies. All right. So let's see. In Florida, officials edited a textbook to remove a passage on George Floyd's murder and the subsequent protest. George Floyd wasn't murdered. He died of a drug overdose. And the protests were riots. In Georgia, after a children's book author giving a talk to fifth graders mentioned that a historical figure was gay, which there's absolutely no reason, school officials did not cancel the author's remaining speaking schedule. That's a flat-out lie. The guy did it himself. So now the Times is flat-out lying to people. The author canceled because he couldn't talk about being gay, which had nothing to do with it. The story is, there's an uncredited guy who helped draw Batman, and his son was gay. That has nothing to do with the story. His son died of AIDS, and after his son died, they thought he had no heirs. But it turns out his son had a kid who had a daughter, so he has a grandchild. The author, the guy who went uncredited, and for some reason, the guy who's given the talk felt it necessary to tell little kids that the son was gay. No reason to say that. It had nothing to do with the story whatsoever. The school told him, hey, you can't talk about being gay to little kids. And he decided, well, I'm canceling all the rest of my things. And now the Times is saying that the school canceled it? No, flat out lying. In yesterday's newsletter, I focused on the specific dangers that extremist Republicans have created for American democracy. We live in a republic, not a democracy. That's one of their propaganda bits, as they try and claim we're a democracy. Today's subject, intolerance of differing views, which is what the Democrats are, is both a right and a left-wing phenomenon. Good, at least he acknowledged that. Like the hard right House Republicans, modern progressivism has created a growing list of issues which disagreement is unacceptable. Hey, look at that. So let's talk about the thing. Let's see let's read it first, and then we'll see. Some universities refuse to hire faculty members who won't write statements supporting diversity programs. That's fine. That's one thing. And that's a dumb thing, too, because there's no value in just diversity for diversity's sake. Activists vilify journalists who cover the difficult debate over whether children should undergo lasting gender transition treatments. You mean sex changes. Sex changes is what they're, and it's not a difficult debate. It's categorically wrong to transition a child. There's no argument in this. In the public health sector, more than 500 experts signed a petition portraying another expert as unethical, fat-phobic eugenics sympathizer because she had questioned the wisdom of extended corona lockdowns. And there was no value to the corona lockdowns. They killed more people than they saved. In fact, they killed more people than the virus did. And fat phobic is hilarious. Yeah, if you're fat, you need to lose weight. That's pretty simple. The body pride movement, body shaming is for people like me that are crippled. That you don't shame me for being crippled, but a fat person that can change themselves, you can shame them for that. You don't shame someone who's disfigured or shame someone who is who was like burned in a fire or mangled somehow. You don't shame those people. Okay, but shaming people who are fat by choice, that's fine. And you don't have a thyroid problem or big bones, you're just fat. These attempts to enforce ideological purity tend to overlook an important bit of American history. Refusing to listen to the other side of a debate doesn't have a good record of success. It does in modern history because the Democrats have done quite well by refusing to accept anything outside of their dogma. Change is messy over time. National heroes like Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., and Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt is not a hero. He was one of the worst presidents ever. He was basically an oligarch. That's the reason why we changed we had an amendment to limit term limits, because FDR was terrible. He made the Depression go on longer. He got us into World War II to help his banking buddies out. He was corrupt. Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr. are great figures. Let's see. They are sacralized. They're treated as leaders who changed the country by transcending politics. In truth, the defining feature of the country's most effective leaders has been their embrace of messy politics, including a willingness to listen to and work with people who view things they do not share. Transformational leaders tend to be both radical and practical. It was true of the founders and the suffragists of Roosevelt and King, not of Roosevelt. Roosevelt did not listen to anybody. He was incredibly intolerant. In a new book about Lincoln, Steve Inskeep, the NPR host, argues that this approach was a defining feature of Lincoln's victory over slavery and his rescue of the nation. The book's first sentence says Abraham Lincoln was a politician. He refused to isolate an abolitionist in Congress, whom others considered extreme. He also worked with the leader of the anti-immigration Know Nothing Party. The title of Inskeep's book is Differ If We Must, a reference to a line in a respectful letter that Lincoln wrote to a friend who refused to oppose slavery. That's fine. You should probably also mention that Lincoln did court-martial people and declared martial law, which was later declared illegal. And he did try and arrest sitting members of Congress. If you're going to defeat someone you think is doing something terrible and also keep a democracy, we don't have a democracy, we have a republic, so that's wrong. You have to build a majority, and that's why they do that. In a democracy, all you have to do is just have a simple majority. That's why they keep talking about it. They just want the majority to take away the rights of everyone else. They don't care about the Constitution. Inskeep said in an interview with Anand Gir Hardis Substack newsletter, and that might mean that you have to deal with people that you disagree with on some things or many things or even most things, but you find common cause that you can work with them on something, which the Democrats won't do at all. And to a certain extent, the Republicans are also becoming ideologically pure. The counter argument is plain enough that the other side is a political debate so wrong that doesn't even merit engagement. The other side is an un-American, according to this view. To use a phrase now common on the political left, denies the humanity of others. It simply must be defeated. And that is true. They do that all the time. They love to talk about humanity. My favorite one is when they talk about abortion and humanity, or abortion as healthcare. The unanswered question, though, tends to be how it will be defeated. In a democracy, which we are not, we are a republic. Victory requires winning enough votes to take power, which in turn requires persuasion. In a republic, it's a little bit different, and since we live in a republic, victory doesn't require enough votes to take power. Victory requires that you pass laws. Notice, they don't want laws. They just want to take power and use it. No mention of legislation. It's just power. That doesn't mean winning over most of your opponents. It does often mean winning over some of them, and it's difficult to persuade others if you stop listening to them. He had failed to engage with people who differed. Had he failed to engage with people who differed, he would not have become the Lincoln we know, Inskeep writes. An abiding lesson of political change is that it's usually accomplished by people who aren't too pure to treat their opponents with respect. The new biography of King by Jonathan Ike contains evidence of this same point. Speaking of treating people with respect, you mean like how Joe Biden calls his entire opponents MAGA extremists and terrorists, and the FBI is now looking at Trump supporters as threats to the country? Is that what you're talking about here, Mr. Times opinion columnist, you liar? The recent history of the House Republicans makes that point too. Congressional Democrats have done the difficult, often unsatisfying work of compromising. No, they haven't. With each other and the Senate over the past 15 years, they don't compromise at all. And along the way, they pass laws to expand health insurance, which help the insurance industry and the healthcare industry become massively profitable. Fund clean energy, which was wasted in huge boondoggles that has done absolutely nothing and made life worse for people and killed people. Build roads that were terrible, and it hasn't done roads. Roads are built by gas taxes and at the state level, not by the federal government. And semiconductor factories, no, that's really not true. They haven't done anything. They've just said that they were going to do it, and Trump got more factories here than Biden. House Republicans have a less impressive list of accomplishments. When they have been in power, they have spent more time deposing their own leaders for being impure. That's just not true. Although the Republicans are somewhat feckless. The Democrats are better at wielding government power to their end. That's true. Donald Trump endorsed Representative Jim Jordan, the combative Judiciary Committee chairman, for the Speaker of the House race, which means we might not get Trump, which means the memes will not come, which is a shame because the memes, if Trump were to be Speaker, would be glorious. Two Republicans running have dueling views on Ukraine. Steve Scalise has backed more aid. Jordan hasn't. So we got to go with Jordan because we don't need to be sending any more money to Ukraine. We don't need World War III. Migration. The Biden administration plans to expand the wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, a project it once opposed, and to deport thousands of Venezuelans who recently entered the U.S. Look at that. We're getting close to election year, and they've already flooded the country with millions upon millions of new, fresh voters for them, so they figured they have enough. The administration said it would waive environmental laws to build the wall quickly, the Texas Tribune reports. So, of course, once again, when it was Trump, the wall was evil, and AOC went down there and protested and screamed at an empty parking lot. But now that it's Biden, it's okay to put kids in cages. It's okay to build the wall and do all this. You know, it's just proving that they're liars. A surge in Venezuelan migrants has overwhelmed Chicago's public services. Oh, well, who cares? They claim they're a sanctuary city. Send them all to there. Make them suffer. You voted for this. Trump. After leaving office, Trump shared nuclear submarine secrets with an Australian businessman in Mar-a-Lago. Prosecutors have interviewed the businessman. I doubt that's true. That's probably more fluff. That's the nuclear secret he shared was that we have 15 subs or something like that. That's, this is more of the same BS. Trump's lawyer has asked the judge to throw out a federal election interference case, citing presidential immunity. More on politics. The police arrested a man with a handgun who was looking for Governor Tony Evers at the Wisconsin State Capitol. The man posted bail and returned with an assault rifle. He didn't return with an assault rifle because there aren't assault rifles. He just came with a semi-automatic rifle. She showed the way. Female political leaders, including Vice President Kamala Harris, honored Dianne Feinstein in her memorial service. Yeah, she showed the way to be corrupt. She showed the way to make hundreds of millions of dollars while being a public servant. I mean, she was a corrupt person. Representative George Santos, former treasurer, admitted that she had fraudulently reported a fictional $500,000 loan that Santos claimed to have made to his campaign. Isn't that illegal? I mean, man, Santos, this guy. But you know what? You can't do anything to Santos because Joe Biden lied repeatedly. He lies on almost a daily basis. He talks about when he's like somewhat lucid, he says some of the most outrageous stuff. He says that he was at every smash shooting and he said his son died in Iraq when he didn't die in Iraq. I mean, he's said some of the most ludicrous and insane things. The IRS placed a lien on Rudy Giuliani's Florida condo because he owes about $550,000 in taxes. So again, Hunter Biden got away with not paying taxes for years on end, and then they slow walked it so the statute of limitations would run out. But if you go against the machine and the establishment, they will come after you. War in Ukraine. A Russian missile killed at least 51 people at a wake for a Ukrainian soldier in the northeastern village of Roza. Vladimir Putin suggested that an intoxicated Prigozhin and his associates caused the plane crash that killed him. U.S. officials say Putin probably ordered Prigozhin's death. All right, so we'll talk about a couple things there. So the reason why they were talking about the Russian missile strike is because, so that's a retaliatory strike because the Ukrainians have been continuously targeting civilians in Russia. They've targeted the Kerch Bridge several times, and they've targeted numerous civilian areas. They've hit apartment buildings and things like that. So the Russians are now retaliating. Notice that the war is basically over. I don't think the war is continuing at this point. When you look at the map, the Russians have taken all of the territory that they initially set out to claim that they wanted. It seems like they're just fortifying this. I think the war has basically ended, and Ukraine is just like hitting targets in Russia. It just kind of is a retaliation, and just sour grape strikes is really all these are. And so the Russians, they've absorbed some of them, and then when they get mad, they fire a few missiles off back at the Ukrainians. to say, hey, let's knock this off. I think we're going to see this war end relatively soon. I don't think there's going to be a lot more. I know that the Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines, the average age is like 43, and most of them are refusing to do any more like they don't want to walk into minefields and die. They're refusing. So it looks like this war may be coming to an end, which is a good thing. I want to see the war end. I don't really care the result. It's two of the most corrupt countries fighting. As far as the Prigozhin thing, man, that, they were playing with grenades and they accidentally blew themselves up. I totally believe that. In Russia, they once had this pedophile that raped a dude's kid, and so the dude stabbed him in the back 37 times and then buried him. And he went to court and said that the guy stabbed himself and buried himself, and the judge is like, okay, I believe it. It's Russia. Why not? So, yeah, why not? Why not just say that they were playing with grenades and high on coke and then just died? Why not? This is the new falling out of a window. Okay, so Syria, a drone attack killed at least 80 people at a graduation ceremony for Syrian military cadets. No group has claimed responsibility. In a separate episode, a U.S. fighter jet shot down a Turkish military drone that had entered a restricted zone in Syria, launched airstrikes, and flown near American troops. Why do we have troops in Syria? Why? There's absolutely no reason that we should have troops in Syria whatsoever. The SEC sued Elon Musk to force him to testify about purchasing Twitter stock before he bought the company, which makes no sense. They're just going after him because he's given them egg on their face a couple of times. This is hilarious. Emmett Tucker, the Wall Street Journal's new editor-in-chief, wants to shed stuffiness and attract younger readers. Good luck with that. That's not going to happen. The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Narges Mohammadi, Iran's most prominent human rights activist, who is imprisoned. That one's probably a good one. She is still pushing for national change from inside her jail cell. Read a profile of her. Let's see other big stories. George Tyndall, the former USC gynecologist accused of sexually abusing patients, was found dead at his home. The cause of death was unclear. China's experiencing a brain drain, but the U.S. isn't benefiting from it. Many of those leaving are going to other developed countries, Li Wan reports. China has more. If you take just the top 10% of Chinese students, there's more of them than there are all American students. We're in a big problem. We're in a big deficit. When healthcare workers' mental health and workplace safety improves, patients' well-being improves. Yeah. President Biden's middle class ethos and economic aggression still gives Democrats their... Biden isn't middle class at all. Nobody thinks of Biden as middle class. He's a multimillionaire, lives in extremely rich houses, drives really pricey cars. He lives in an ivy tower. He's disconnected from reality. Nobody thinks he's middle class. Everybody hates him. He has terrible approval ratings. They would be even worse if the media didn't prop him up. He's less popular than Trump at the same time in his presidency. This is pathetic. 81 million votes. Too young for me inside a senior center screening of The Golden Bachelor. We're gonna just skip that. High honor. The Norwegian writer John Foss won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Foss is best known for his plays, whose sparse style and existential themes draw comparison to Harold Pinter and Samuel Beckett. His novels have also recently found acclaim in the English-speaking world, especially his Septology series about an aging artist reckoning with the divine. The Nigerian-Belgian artist Otobong Nakanda won the Nasir Prize for sculpture, one of the art world's top honors. Okay, so this day in history, on October 6th, 1973, war erupted in the Middle East as Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during the Yom Kippur holiday, starting a nearly 3-week conflict that would become known as the Yom Kippur War. On this date, October 6th. In 1536, English theologian and scholar William Tyndale, who was the first to translate the Bible into early modern English, was executed for heresy. In 1927, the era of talking pictures arrived with the opening of The Jazz Singer starring Al Jolson, a feature containing both silent and sound synchronized sequences. In 1928, Chiang Kai-shek became president of China. In 1939, in a speech to the Reichstag, German Chancellor Adolf Hitler spoke of his plans to reorder the ethnic layout of Europe, a plan that would entail settling the Jewish problem. In 1976, President Gerald R. Ford, in his second presidential debate with Democrat Jimmy Carter, asserted that there was no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe. In 1979, Pope John Paul II, on a week-long U.S. tour, became the first pontiff to visit the White House, where he was received by President Jimmy Carter. In 1981, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was shot to death by extremists while reviewing a military parade. In 2003, American Paul Lauterbur and Britain Peter Mansfield won the Nobel Prize for Medicine for discoveries that led to magnetic resonance imaging. In 2010, the social networking photo app Instagram was launched by Kevin Systrom and Mark Krieger. In 2014, the Supreme Court unexpectedly cleared the way for dramatic expansion of gay marriage in the United States as it rejected appeals from 5 states seeking to preserve their bans, effectively making such marriages legal in 30 states. In 2017, the board of directors of the Weinstein Co. said movie mogul Harvey Weinstein was on indefinite leave from the company he founded amid an internal investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him. In 2018, in the narrowest Senate confirmation of a Supreme Court justice in nearly a century and a half, Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed by a vote of 50 to 48. He was sworn in hours later. In 2020, President Donald Trump, recovering from corona, tweeted his eagerness to return to the campaign trail and said he still planned to attend an upcoming debate with Democrat Joe Biden in Miami. Biden said there should be no debate as long as Trump remains corona positive. The debate would be canceled. In 2022, a former police officer facing a drug charge burst into a daycare center in Thailand, killing at least 36 people, most of them preschoolers, in the deadliest rampage in the nation's history. Wow! I didn't ever hear about that one. That's pretty awful. All right, that's it. It's Friday, baby.